watching Michael Jordan on Sundays is going to feel regular for the crew in Cincinnati as Ben Baby, who is covering the Bengals. He's been on our show a couple of times. He's been Dallas Morning News, now up in Cincinnati covering Burrow and the number one pick. We were talking about The Last Dance in the documentary. I know you're all in on it, man. Give me your synopsis as we see two more episodes last night.
Man, first off, it's always good chopping it up with y'all, and yeah, man, when I heard the hip hop parade, it got me thinking back to last night watching it, and it's been a lot of fun. You know, we haven't had a lot to look forward to, and especially in the sports world over the last, essentially 2 months, and so, it's kind of like, you get 2 hours to cherish, this only sporting event that we have essentially, and then also kind of live in nostalgia for a little bit, and it's just so much fun to go back and look at that era of basketball because it was a blast.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It's been great to watch. A couple of weeks ago, Joe was here. Joe Burrow stopped by off the bench, and we asked him just on the way out. We got a little family tidbit that his drink of choice was 7-Up and orange juice. Then on the first Last Dance documentary, Jordan admits that that's his drink of choice, 7-Up and orange juice. I had never heard of that a month ago. Now I've heard it twice from two of the greatest athletes I've ever seen. What is the pressure on Burrow being the hometown kid and now the chosen number one pick, and it looks like going to be a day one starter at that position?
Yeah, you figured you'd be putting Seagrams in 7-Up. I didn't think orange juice in 7-Up was a drink of choice there. I don't know if it's necessarily the hometown pick that's making the pressure on Joe. I think it's the fact that when you look at all the circumstances around him, what this franchise hasn't done, which is won a playoff game since January of '91, and you look at just the overall, just where the franchise sits. I think that's where the pressure is for Joe, for him to come in here, and they've been waiting on him for essentially months now, and now that he's finally on the roster, and whenever the season starts, there's going to be a lot of expectation on him to turn this around and make the Bengals a playoff team again, something they haven't done since 2015. And, in talking to Joe during the build-up to the draft process, I think he relishes that. And, the kind of competitor he is, he's going to embrace that level of expectation that's going to be on him when he starts in Cincinnati.
Ben, do you have any idea about the logistics during the pandemic of what Burrow has or hasn't been able to do with the franchise? Like, is he in that building yet? Is he in Cincinnati? Like, what exactly is going on in-house right now?
So right now they can't integrate the rookie class until May 11th. So normally, so that'd be next Monday. Usually, if it weren't for the pandemic, they would have already been in by now, or we'd be in the middle of rookie minicamp or just wrapping up rookie minicamp. But because of what's going on, the rookies can't be integrated until May 11th. So the Bengals kind of have to get creative. I mean, you can essentially, the way it was described is they can record a bunch of stuff and then have the rookies all watch it starting May 11th, but that's when the integration process won't fully start. So there's going to be a little bit of a challenge, for Burrow coming in here because, it's even different than when Andy Dalton came in 2011 because he could at least throw with his wide receivers even though there was a lockout that season. Joe can't really do that right now. So it's going to be fascinating to see what the acclimation period is going to look like for him, given the pandemic and the restrictions that are in place.
Well, and you mentioned throwing to the wide receivers. That's what I wanted to ask about next because Ben, here at LSU, like we keep learning the kind of legends of Burrow and what they did to find success, and they were doing stuff I've never heard of in college. He had the entire team waking up for player-only practices during the summer at 10 a.m. on Saturday. So getting that timing down, he attributes it to a lot of the success. Has he tried to get with those receivers? Do you think, would they be able to do that on the side, or would that be a big PR meltdown? What have you heard in terms of him trying to get that timing down?
I haven't heard anything in regards to that, but, I think that would be something that would be a pretty risky move right now because I think right now you still want to maintain the federal guidelines and the state guidelines and making sure that you're staying safe and sanitary during all of this. But, you make an interesting point that, that's been Burrow's MO his entire career. I mean, talking to his offensive coordinator and now high school coach at Athens, he was saying that, Joe used to live a couple blocks away from him, and we used to text him in the spring and said, hey, can we go up and throw routes? And he was like, I don't have kids texting me. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's when he knew that Joe was a different kind of cat. So, I think that Joe's going to try to get as much work as he can in whenever it's allowed. But, like you said, that's something he's always done. It's interesting now he can't do that as he's making the jump to the NFL.
Ben, in covering the draft, was there ever a doubt? Was there ever a question that they were going to select Burrow?
I don't think there's any question that they were going to take anybody but Burrow. I think when you looked at what the franchise needed off the field in terms of a boost and something that somebody to put butts in seats and which is necessary given how bad attendance was last year. Burrow was the only logical pick in that regard. And then when you look at what he does on the field, all his skills and strengths as a quarterback fit exactly with what the Bengals coaching staff really likes. And so I think, the biggest question mark is his lack of arm strength, but the coaching staff never really had any concerns about any of that. They liked what he did in terms of his pre-snap decision-making at the line of scrimmage, his timing, his accuracy, and I think those are the three skills that you probably need the most to be a successful quarterback at any level.
We don't know a lot about the Cincinnati Bengals down in this part of the country, but it feels like they were the New Orleans Saints before Sean Payton and Drew Brees arrived in 2006. Just very unorganized, never winning consistently, and kind of had a reputation as a cheap franchise. What is the feeling in covering them now being around Cincinnati? Will they give Joe every opportunity, every chance to win?
I think that was one of the big question marks coming into the offseason, because I think that would be a very fair assessment of the franchise, is that, locally and nationally, they were known as a cheap franchise, not willing to invest into the franchises to make it a championship level, contender. And, Carson Palmer said that in the build up to the draft. And I know that stung locally, which I didn't really make any sense because, people have been saying that in town for such a long time. And I think that's why what happened this offseason was so important. The fact that they spent so much money in free agency also, and that came after, Burrow said, I want to go to a place that's competing for Super Bowls. Part of me thinks that wasn't a coincidence. The Bengals went out and went through the spending spree, knowing that they were going to get Joe Burrow. But I think the coaching staff knows that as well. And so you're starting to see the tide turn a little bit in regards to maybe the front office mentality of what's going to take to build a roster. And I think it's necessary given how bad the roster is and where they are in the rebuild process.
One guy that they did pay in that spree was AJ Green, and we kind of talked about it here, kind of laughing that Joe made him keep Green. Has AJ Green said anything on record about Joe Burrow yet, or is he just kind of keeping to himself during this time?
Yeah, AJ's pretty much kept to himself since last July when he messed up his ankle and didn't play a game throughout the season. So, I think I saw him tweet at Chad Johnson saying, Chad, challenge everybody to, he'll line up as a DB and he'd love to get some work in with Burrow and the wide receivers. And AJ said, yeah, I could use a little warm-up before I get back out there. But the reality is that AJ's situation will also make Burrow's acclimation a little interesting, because AJ's already said, if I don't have a deal in place, a long-term deal, I'm probably not going to do OTAs. I may skip a little bit of training camp because I don't want to take that risk. And so that's going to make things a little bit more tricky for Burrow as he tries to acclimate, because he won't have his number one receiver. And AJ has said, if they franchise tag me, which the Bengals have done, I'll show up, I'll play all the games, but I'll do it very begrudgingly. And so I think in the offseason it'll hurt, but in the same time, when the season gets going, Burrow should have a very motivated AJ Green, because AJ's going to be playing for that next deal, and he's going to be playing, pretty upset that the Bengals, if they don't give him a long-term deal this offseason, didn't show that kind of respect and loyalty and that trust in what AJ can do at this level.
You're familiar with Dallas and the sports scene there. What was your reaction to Andy Dalton inking a year deal with the Cowboys after being released from the Bengals last week?
Honestly, it makes a ton of sense. They've already got a house there. They just got to hop on the Dallas Motorway to head north to Frisco to the practice facility. And when you look at, Andy played his college ball at TCU. His wife, JJ, is from nearby Richardson. I just think that it makes sense given that there weren't no kind of starting jobs open, and Andy ultimately wanted that. And I think that he wasn't thrilled with the timing of his release, because by the time that he was cut, all the musical chairs essentially had been filled. So if you're looking for a place as a stopgap year, you might as well pick a place you've already got a house in, and just be a backup for a year, just kind of bide your time and then wait until 2021 to see what's available. And I think that's probably Andy's best option, to be a starter I was kind of surprised he didn't end up, trying his hand at Jacksonville. But given where that franchise is at, I don't really know what's going on there. So, I mean, maybe, he looked at it, he goes, you know what, given the instability, I'd rather just go to a place where I know, it's a safe bet, and then we'll kind of see. I'll take my risk in 2021.
Ben Baby, who covers the Cincinnati Bengals over at ESPN. He's on Twitter at Ben_Baby. He's got a great write-up on Burrow that he's got pinned right at the top of his Twitter page, talking about Burrow getting started in Cincinnati. Ben, it's been great to read your work with Burrow being drafted up there. We'll continue to stay in touch. Thank you, man.
Hey, sounds good. Y'all take care.